versus you. It's you 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 versus you. Time to clear your mental, everything you've been through. Looking in the mirror like you're the one with the issues. You against yourself, feel like you against the world. Internally battling all of the trauma you struggle to manage.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Saquon, and I'd like to welcome you all back to the You vs. You podcast. Today's episode is episode 3 of the Round Table edition. I am absolutely delighted to have this conversation because this particular conversation is with a brother that I've known for the better part of 25 years. We went to college together. We were kids together. We were young men together as we both migrated to Atlanta around about the similar time frame. And then we are now men together. So we've been a part of our life ascension. And to be able to have a front row seat to this brother's ascension, everything that he's been able to accomplish in life has been nothing short of extraordinary. Today's conversation is going to be shrouded around his book, Bamboozled. We're going to talk about alcohol consciousness today. So I'm extremely delighted to introduce this brother, Brother Ken Middleton. Thank you for joining the show, man.
Yeah,
What's up, big dog?
I appreciate you, man. It's weird when you say we've known each other for over 20 years. It's insane when you think about it. We were kids, 18 years old, in college. I remember you riding around with your book sack on all the time. So no, man, it's great. And it's great to just get a sense to see you grow. I mean, I love the show, man. I've been watching the show and just seeing what you're doing with it, man. It really is helping people. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
I appreciate that, man. So let's dive right into this. Okay, so first of all, I had the opportunity to read this book, okay? Not just because you're my friend, but because I was smitten by the title and I was intrigued by it, right? Like Bamboozled. And I was able to draw back to my experience in college, right? Which consisted primarily of a lot of drinking.
A lot of drinking.
Right? A lot of blackouts. And then also, I think that those times contributed to my lack of development as it pertains to mental health. But that's neither here nor there as it pertains to right now. What inspired this great work?
Yeah, for me, Quan, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? So going through college and alcohol being such an important part of my life for the better part of 19 years, I got to a place in my life where my life was fine. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And I tell anyone, the reason I wrote this book is that I felt like my life was good without drink or was fine with drinking, but I felt like there was a higher level for me to achieve. So just to kind of give you the full story, because I think it's important to tell this, I had left my former company and tried to start a business on my own. I wanted to go into entrepreneurship, and I thought I was 36 years old at the time, and I said this was the time that I should try to do my own thing. And I did it for about a year, and it was really, really hard. Anyone that's ever done their own business can really see, like, when you step out on your own, there's another level of work and commitment that you got to demand from yourself. And after the first year, I didn't make any money. I think that first year I made maybe $40,000. And I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to go back to corporate America. I don't think I can do this. This isn't going to be for me. And I just thought about, like, in my life, I've always been a hard driver. I've always been the guy that wakes up at 5 a.m, that runs, that eats well, that always try to push myself. But I always recognized that when it came to drinking, I knew it was holding me back. I knew every time that I drink, a night that I went out, had a good time, the next morning, maybe I was giving a decent effort, but I wasn't giving 100%. It was at 70 or 80%. And I always joked that maybe my 70 or 80% was as good as other people 100%. But the reality was, when it came to entrepreneurship, it wasn't enough for me to be successful. So I looked myself in the mirror and I said, listen, Ken, do you want to go back to corporate America without saying that you gave this 1,000%? And I knew I couldn't say that unless I said, I'm going to stop drinking, because I'm 0 to 100. I can't do one drink. I can't do a couple of drinks. When I start, I go all the way. So I said, for me, I have to 100% abstain. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try it for 3 months and I'm going to see what it does. Let's try 3 months. I'm not saying I'm going to not drink forever. I said 3 months. I'm just going to give it a shot, right? November 15th, 2018, I made that decision. or November 10th, 2018. And I told my wife about it, and amazingly, I'm so lucky. She said, you know, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it with you. Let's do it together. And I was like, thank you. And so we started doing it. And more so, it was about, all right, how much more clarity can I have? How much harder can I work without having those hangovers the next morning? That was the beginning of it. But then as time progressed, I recognized all these positive things that were happening because I didn't drink, from me sleeping better, to me being able to eat better, to me not getting in arguments with my wife, or girlfriend at the time, wife now. And I just said, man, there's a lot of positive stuff from it. Now, and combine all that with the fact that in those next 3 months, Quan, I made 3 times as much money as I made in the previous 9 months.
Wow.
And that was the thing that said, okay, now there may be something here to this not drinking. And that was 6 years ago. And then from there, you know, I've just grown in it and just recognized that, you know, even though I didn't see myself as being rock bottom, there was still a higher level of achievement that I could have. Like, my life was fine. I was making good money, but it wasn't the level of person that I could be. So then the reason I decided to write Bamboozled is, as I'm going on this journey of learning myself and of who I can be without alcohol, I started to write about it in a publication called Alcohol Is Not Your Friend. It was about understanding that alcohol, you think that it's helping you, but it's holding you back in so many ways. And I was learning so much from all my research and all of my writings that I said, I wish there was a book that could put all of this information to hopefully share this with others so they can learn. Because for me, it's like, listen, I'm not saying you shouldn't drink. That's not my standpoint. I don't believe in that. Personally, I believe there's probably a time in your life that alcohol helps you as an individual, surprisingly to some people, but I do believe that. But I just wanted people that if they did drink, I wanted them to have all the knowledge that I didn't have until I stopped drinking, to understand all the things that alcohol hurts you, the negative ways that it hurts you, that you don't realize you're making that trade-off when you're doing it. And in my desire to write this book, Bamboozled, it was around writing a book that isn't about you hitting rock bottom. It isn't about you being an alcoholic and you needing to drink. A lot of times the story of not drinking is around, don't drink because you don't want to become this. No. For me, the desire to not drink is about, don't drink because there's another higher version of you that you'll never reach if you continue to drink. And that's what the story is about. The title Bamboozled is about alcohol is tricking you. It's beguiling you to think it's helping you when it's not. And if you give what I call alcohol consciousness, which isn't, I don't use the term sobriety. I use alcohol consciousness because it's about being conscious of the decision you're making. Just like when you eat grilled chicken instead of fried chicken, it's not because you're addicted to fried chicken. It's because you are health conscious to not eat fried chicken. So alcohol consciousness isn't about not drinking. Alcohol consciousness is about drinking, understanding the choices that you're making, and then hopefully either deciding to not drink a lot, or if you're like me, not drink at all.
You know, that explanation, that monologue, if you will, was incredibly concise. I feel like I have an in-depth understanding of you just from that. The only thing I want to add to that is that was a first-person account. Right? So you had a mild moment of catharsis that required you to sit with yourself, assess yourself, understand where you wanted to go, look at your current trajectory, and identify changes that needed to be made in order to reach the optimum result. But from a third-person standpoint, right? Because you're in great shape. Right? You've always looked the part. You've always done the part. You've always been driven from a third person or an indirect standpoint. And that's why this book is so important. That's why transparency and vulnerability is so important, because from my vantage point, I would have never known this.
Yeah.
And you alluded to it a moment ago, but I really want to come back to that. That's why I love the fact that you're not talking about addiction. You're not telling people that they don't need to drink. You're terming this thing as alcohol consciousness.
That's it.
Right? To say, hey, look at this external agent, right? And let's just assess it objectively and see if it's a benefit, if it's a detriment, right? And if it's either one of those things, let's respond accordingly. So I know that you gave us the definition of alcohol consciousness, but can you just get a little bit more granular?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that, and Quan, you hit the nail on the head, man. Like that's what it's about. It's not about you saying you're not going to drink and forget it. Not like it's about doing the work and understanding scientifically what this is doing. The term you use is perfect. Objectively. Like I'm not like, and the reason I wrote this book in the manner that I did is like, listen, don't believe me. Don't listen to things I say. Listen to science. And when I did my research and I was doing my writing, it was all about looking at scientifically, physiologically what alcohol does to you and understanding that. And then at that point, you can decide if you want to continue to drink or not. Now, for some people, they may decide, I don't want to drink at all. I don't want to drink ever. For other people, they're like, all right, I'm going to only drink once a week, or I might drink once a month. It's about understanding and looking and just really doing the analysis of how is it affecting me? What am I doing? How is it affecting the way I either interact with my friends, interact with my spouses, my career, all the ways that it could negatively affect me, and then decide if you want to do it or not. But it's not about preaching. I don't ever say don't drink. That's not my standpoint, because everyone has to live their own life. I don't know what your life is like. So I always tell people, you got to do what's best for you. But the purpose of the book is just to educate people, is to give them that knowledge. And then once you have the knowledge, I always say that like red pill, blue pill, then you decide where you want to go. That's what alcohol consciousness is about. It's about you consciously saying, and if you want to drink all the time and that's the decision you make, fine with me, it's your life. I don't have a problem with it.
Absolutely. And I love that. And what you're doing, or what you've done rather, is you've basically compiled the data. And like you said, listen, make your own choice. But when you compiled this data, you did it in such a way that I have to say, man, is incredibly compelling. Like when I read, because I never knew this until I read your book, 95,000 people, 68 men, 27,000 women, 68,000 men, 27,000 women die from alcohol-related causes annually. But when I read that alcohol-related cause annually, in my mind, that encompasses a broad range of possible deaths. So can you touch upon that, please?
Yeah, it's funny when you sent me that for the framework, man, and I was thinking through it, and I was like, man, that is a lot. And I would say, let me refresh and do some more research just to get caught up on that. That stat, Quan, was actually from 2016.
Wow.
So it's 178,000 people now. Whoa. That from a year, over a year basis. And that's increased. I think that was from 2022. And that was a 30% increase from 2020 to that 178 number. Number wise, if you break that down, we're saying 61,000 of that 178 is one time binge drinking related death. So when you say one time death, you think, I guess murder could fall in there, drunk driving could fall in there, alcohol poisoning can fall in there. The other remaining 120 or so thousand are health related deaths, cancer related deaths, things that happen from drinking. But if you look at both of them, and this is one of the reasons I think there is an acceptance, or it's gaining momentum of an acceptance of that alcohol is not that great for you. And I don't know if you've heard recently, but the Surgeon General just recently said that he is thinking about putting warnings on alcohol the same way they do on cigarette packs. And it's not as bad as not as hardcore as they do in Europe, over in the UK, but they're thinking about putting like the cancer warning that you see on a cigarette pack here on alcohol, because alcohol causes cancer. A 40% increase. If you drink alcohol consistently as you age, you have a 40% increased chance of developing cancer as you get older. 40%. It's one of the greatest causes of cancer, and people don't recognize it. So it's around. So I feel like there's a movement that more people are understanding that 61,000 is a lot that happens from drunk driving and things of that nature. But that 130 or so that are dying from health related causes over time, those are the ones, and I'm sure it's more than that. Those are the ones that we're probably just seeing directly, but I'm sure there's more than that. I mean, people just don't understand that these are preventable deaths, that if you just understand what it's doing, that maybe you won't make that decision. And that cancer information there is something a lot of people don't know. And the fact they're thinking about putting that on the label of an alcohol product, to me is exciting, because at the end of the day, it's just all about information. All about information, and people decide.
Yeah, man, that's a two-prong revelation for me. So yeah, A, I did not know that it was linked directly to cancer. And then
Oh
B, I
yeah.
didn't know that the Surgeon General was contemplating putting that label on the alcohol beverages, because I think that that's something that should be done. And that immediately takes me back, walking it back briefly to objectivity, because it seems like when I read your book, and I agree with you as well. Listen, objectively, alcohol needs to be identified, labeled as an
Yes.
actual drug,
Yeah.
right? Like, this is a leisure thing that we do. It's socially accepted, right? And I think from a historical context, I think that people battled with that initially with prohibition, but
Yeah.
it's been acceptable for so long
Yep.
that the stigma sort of lessened.
Yeah. 100%.
But yes, we need to categorize this thing as an actual drug, particularly when you consider the effects that it has on people with these alarming numbers.
Yeah. So if you think about, there's a 5 class tier of drugs, right? When you think about the least likely drug, I think I want to say like coffee is considered a drug. The legal term for a drug, I believe, is anything that changes your mental state and can change your physiological body internally, right? Coffee could be considered. There's 5 classes of drug that the FDA says, all right, this is a drug if you do from an illegal standpoint. I want to say marijuana is like 3, right? Like as far as the potency of it, the effect that it has on it. The 5 class drug you would think is something like heroin, something like cocaine, something that's really quick, fentanyl, right? Fentanyl. Nowhere in there at all is alcohol. Alcohol is not in 1 through 5. You hear the term alcohol and drugs. People say it all the time, drugs and alcohol. Like alcohol is not a drug. Like it is. Like you don't have to say alcohol and you don't, like they are one and of the same. So you're exactly right where the perception is what has for so long made alcohol so accepted by so many people, and it's seen, and I'm sure we're going to get there, and like a rite of passage where over time, if you look at how, and listen, and we'll talk more about it, but just growing up, you see your family members drinking and it being done in so many different activities. I went to a baby shower yesterday. It was a lot of drinking at the baby shower. I mean, it was wide open. People were doing it big at the baby shower. You see weddings, everything involves alcohol. So it's almost like people don't feel like they can do or celebrate things without it. And as a young kid, when you see people do that and you think you want to become an adult, you don't see the option of not doing it. I do think over time it's starting to become a little bit more accepted with the non-alcoholic beers that are really starting to gain traction. People are really talking about it more, with people giving people more choices. When you go to places and they say it's not always we only have alcohol, they always have other choices now, that I think it's starting to become a little bit more acceptable. And then the big thing that I'm encouraged about now is Gen Z, right? The most recent generation, I think born in like 1977 or later, are like 30% less likely to drink than the younger generations. Now, I gotta think some of that has been around the education around it, the dry Januaries, the sober Octobers, all the different ways that alcohol has been put in a spotlight, like, hey, this isn't as great as you thought it would be. And a lot of the stories that we hear about things ruining people's lives. And so I think I don't know if it's like the change like we saw with smoking, but I do feel a little bit that we are at a somewhat of an inflection point that could change the way in 10 to 20 years that we look at alcohol, and it's seen as something that, if you decide to do it, it's fine, but it's not as accepted as the masses do it in the same way that it is today.
Perfect explanation. Perfect segue also to the neurological effects of alcohol upon the brain, our dopaminergic responses. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I was writing initially, it was on a platform called Medium. I don't know if you heard of Medium at all, but okay. So Medium is a great platform, man. I think definitely you would love that, because it's just people really diving in, double clicking on topics and just giving great information. I think you would really love it. But that was my initial outlet, and it was around just writing about different concepts of alcohol and just trying to make sure I was sharing this with others. So the first article that I wrote that went like viral, if you would say, like I got thousands of likes, a lot of posts, a lot of comments, was called The Science of Alcohol. And the way it was talked about, it was from like to want to must. And I wanted people to understand the insidious way that alcohol preys upon you. And insidious is a hard word because it makes alcohol seem like it's evil. Alcohol is not evil. Alcohol is doing what it's supposed to do. And this is how it works, and it relates to dopamine, right? So everybody thinks dopamine, and they think dopamine is the feel-good drug. And that's true. Dopamine does make you feel good. There's no doubt about it. But what most people don't understand is that dopamine is the learning drug. Dopamine is what has dopamine is the reason as Homo sapiens we have lived for thousands of years, because it helps us learn things. It ingrains things in our mind. And let me explain it. When we were thousands of years ago, Homo sapiens, or we were Neanderthals, and we would go and taste something that was good, really, really good. We never had it before. It tasted so good, and we're like, this berry is amazing. That feeling of goodness would sear that in your mind because you want to remember where you found that thing. You wanted to know, where did I see this berry? I got to make sure I come back and get this berry. We didn't get food the way we got it before. So dopamine was the thing that helped you remember when something was good that you needed to go back and get. So dopamine is what we've used to live all these years to help us know what's good for us as opposed to what's bad for us. How it works with alcohol is that whenever we drink, it creates artificial dopamine, or it creates artificial endorphins. The connection, like that opioid inside of you that's related from the secretion of dopamine. When you get dopamine, endorphins are released to make you feel good. So here's how it works. Whenever you drink alcohol, it artificially creates endorphins to make you feel good. That's why we like to drink. That's why we get that buzz feeling, because our body is trying to get alcohol out of our system, but the endorphins makes us feel good. How it works is that whenever your body artificially creates an endorphin, an opioid that your body naturally creates, right? And you create endorphins whenever someone hugs you, or you eat a good piece of food, or it creates your body naturally. Alcohol artificially creates it. And it's a spike, because it's a lot in a very short amount of time. Whenever something like that internally changes your body's composition, your body freaks out a little bit. And it's like, what is going on? We're off homeostasis. Something is a little wrong. Our baseline is here. We're all of a sudden right here. When we eat a piece of candy, we're right here. When we see a loved one or get a hug, we're right here. Our body can handle that. But when we're all the way up here, holy shit, can I curse?
Of course you
Holy
can.
shit, like it freaks out a little bit.
That
yeah, it freaks out a little bit, and it's like, what am I going to do? So then it releases a opioid called dynorphin, which counterbalances that. It counterbalances your endorphins. So you drink, endorphins are released. Your body wants to get the homeostasis. It's like, okay, you're way above your baseline, Quan. I need to get you back here. I'm going to release dynorphins to get you back down. So then that's why after like 30 minutes or so, all of a sudden you lose your buzz, because the dynorphins are counterbalancing the artificial endorphin balance. Then what do? You get another drink. You're like, all right, I'm losing my buzz. Let's keep the party going, right? So you go in and give me another shot, right? So then boom, you get another spike of endorphins. What your body does, oh snap, let me get them back to homeostasis. So this is the thing. This is the roller coaster your body is doing the entire night when you're drinking. So then by the end of the night, let's say it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the bar's shutting down. You're like, hey, I'm going to go home. You stop drinking. But your body is still on this kick of releasing dynorphins, because it's like, yo, this guy is going crazy drinking. I need to get us back to homeostasis. So you go home to go to sleep. You try to go to sleep. Your body's amped up. That's part of the reason you can't sleep when you're drinking. You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because your body has released the dynorphins that are still working in your body, and it's still agitated and it's not at rest. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the effects. The next morning, I don't know if this happened to you, but it used to happen to me. You feel anxiety in the morning. There's anxiousness. That's the dynorphins in your body that was trying to counterbalance the alcohol over time, right? You feel anxious in the morning. Sometimes you may feel depressed in the morning because of that dynorphins being released to counterbalance the endorphins. So this is what happens. Initially, you start drinking because you like it. Then you have this endorphin-dynorphin mix, right? And it happens over time. And over time, let's say you like to drink every Friday at 5 o'clock. That's what you do. Friday at 5, you start drinking. It's the weekend. We're going to start drinking. So your body, because our bodies are so smart, they're an amazing thing. Your body is so smart that it says this. It says, you know what? Quan drinks every Friday at 5 o'clock. I know it like clockwork. He's been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. You know what? Instead of me waiting for Quan to drink at 5 o'clock to release these dynorphins to counterbalance his artificial endorphin kit, Why don't I release it preemptively? Why don't I release it at 3 o'clock? Why don't I release it at 3? Because I know he's going to do it anyway. What happens then is that Friday when you said you didn't want to drink and you didn't feel like drinking, all of a sudden you feel like drinking because your baseline was here, right? Your natural baseline was here. But because your body is so used to you drinking at 5, it released the endorphins and it put you here. So now for you to get to your baseline, you have to drink because you feel weird. Something feels off. You don't feel yourself. You feel that craving. So now you go from liking drinking to wanting to drink, because if you don't drink, you feel off. Something feels wrong. And that's where you start getting cravings, where you find that, man, it's a little more difficult for me not to drink than it used to be. Before, if it was a Friday and I didn't want to drink, it wasn't a big deal. Now, when it's a Friday and I don't want to drink, it feels weird. Something doesn't feel right. And so this is what happens where people start getting cravings and they start drinking and they don't recognize it. They just think, I'm having a bad day. I need a drink because it's been a long week. And all of a sudden it goes from them drinking on Friday to them drinking on Friday and Monday. Then they're drinking on Tuesday and Wednesday. Then it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And it becomes consistent over time. And this is where it gets really scary, is that as you keep doing that, right? So before, whenever you want it to, your body naturally can create endorphins. Our body have the ability to create endorphins naturally. Hormonally, that's how we are, right? Like with anything, when we eat something good or when someone hugs us, it creates it. With anything that you artificially use to create something you can naturally do, your body will lose the ability to create it itself. Let me give you another example that would drive it home. If you use Viagra when you don't need Viagra, you will eventually need Viagra to do your thing because you didn't need it, but because you were using it, and all of a sudden your body got so used to you using that instead of you letting your body naturally do it, eventually your body be like, well, I guess he doesn't need us anymore. So when you use alcohol consistently over a long enough time, something develops called anhedonia, which then says you lose the ability to feel good without alcohol. Like when someone gave you a hug, it made you feel good. It doesn't make you feel good anymore. When you ate something good, it gave you some endorphins. You can't get that anymore. And this is when alcoholism develops. When people that are alcoholic, they don't drink because they're depressed. They drink just to feel normal. You see the shakes and they drink and then they stop shaking. So what happens with anhedonia, over time, you lose the ability to naturally develop endorphins. You lose the ability to just feel good without alcohol, that then you have to drink just to feel normal. So it goes from like, you drink because you like to want, you drink because you develop these cravings over time, to must, to you have to drink just to get to homeostasis. And that's where you get into that 10 to 12% of the population that they say alcohol use disorder is. And that's how dopamine, like alcohol does what it's supposed to do, but that is the way it works. And that's why it's so scary, because I tell people, there are people that are more predisposed to becoming an alcoholic if it's genetic. That's true, right? But I think almost anybody, if you drink long enough and consistent enough, you will become an alcoholic over time, because it's just natural physiology. There's nothing you can do about it. That's how alcohol is supposed to work.
Absolutely. I mean, wow, that's just profound. And in addition to that being how alcohol is supposed to work, you said it, you hit the nail right on the head. That's how your body works.
That's it.
Dopamine, you're right, is a learned, but it's a learning molecule. But in addition to it being a learning molecule, it's an anticipatory molecule.
Yep.
So when it learns this behavior, it tries to anticipate that behavior, even before you actually engage. So like you said, so when your dynorphins begin to preemptively release, which causes your baseline dopaminergic level to drop, what was a spike in dopamine, because you said, have to want.
Yep.
Once that baseline dopaminergic level drops, your spike in dopamine is now just coming back to what your initial baseline was.
You need a higher hit.
So you
got to drink more now.
You got to drink more now.
And it's a vicious cycle, and it just grows over time. And that's where alcoholism develops. It's inevitable. If you drink consistently, it is going to happen there's nothing you can do about it. Now, for some people, they're predisposed because of genetics that it might happen quicker. And if you do it at a younger age, you're way more likely to do it. That's why it's so dangerous if you drink excessively in college. It's extremely dangerous because it hurts you in so many ways, because not only does it stunts your cognitive development growth, but it increases the chances that you will become an alcoholic over time. And especially anybody, I feel so lucky I didn't drink until I was 19, but anybody that drinks at like 14, 15, 16, their chances of becoming an alcoholic, I want to say the numbers around 40 to 50% greater than someone that waits until they're 21 years old and starts drinking the same volume of alcohol.
That's very interesting. And I do want to get granular with that. I want to peel that onion back. But prior to doing so, you have this acronym, MEDS, the
Yeah.
MEDS acronym. Can you please explain that to us?
Yeah, so for me, I want to give you the knowledge that helps you hopefully understand what alcohol is doing for you. But for individuals that want to stop drinking, I felt a need to hopefully give them some kind of strategy to be able to do so. And the MEDS was what I created to do it. And it's an acronym that stands for four things, of course: mental reengineering, exercise, diet commitment, and then success seeking. And I can walk through each of them. And the flow is that you need to do each of them pretty much in that order for you to be able to be successful and increase your chances of being successful when it relates to stop drinking. So first one, the M, is mental reengineering. And what that is about educating yourself about alcohol. For me, when I first stopped drinking, I all of a sudden just started reading all of these books. There's a lot of great books out there. There's Craig Beck's Alcohol Lied to Me. There's Annie Grace's This Naked Mind, William Porter, Alcohol Explained. Man, and I just started voraciously just reading these books. And I remember reading Annie's book when we were going on an international trip. It was 7 hours. And I'm reading this book, Quan, and just I hope some people get when they read my book, you're like, holy shit, I had no idea that this is what was happening. Prime example, I didn't know when I woke up at 3 o'clock every night and couldn't go to sleep. I had no idea that was related to alcohol. I thought it was because I just couldn't sleep. I didn't know it because I had drank 4 hours early and my body was hyped up from the dinorphin mix and the sugar that had been thrown into my system that was throwing my body all off whack. And there's no way I can get good sleep after throwing a chemical such as that in my body. I didn't know any of that. So the fact that I was 3 months in at the time, that I had been having some of the best sleep of my life and I could easily think so much better. I didn't know all that. So mental reengineering is around, you got to change your understanding of what alcohol does to you. You got to change the way you look at alcohol. You got to change the ways you think about alcohol. And you do that through reading all of these great books and understanding and hearing the scientific way that alcohol affects you. I even tell people, you can actually do that first step and keep drinking. The reason is because sometimes I think it's good for you to assess, are these things really happening? Like, read the book, read what it says it's going to do, and then observe. Do you feel that anxiety in the morning after you drink at night? You're at work and it's 8 o'clock and all of a sudden you feel anxious and you're not sure why you feel anxious. It's related. Assess, is that really happening? Because then that would then help you say, okay, if I'm feeling like this with alcohol, now let me compare it to what I can feel like without alcohol. So I don't have a problem with people doing that first step, but you got to do the reading. You got to educate yourself. You got to understand, this is the work. Because I feel like some people, if you just stop drinking, you don't do the work, you're not going to get the most from it. But doing the work is going to really give you the most. So first, mental reengineering. Second is exercise commitment. The reason I think this is important, it relates to the gentleman you had earlier last time. The
Shout
gentleman,
out to Brother Renault.
yeah, man, great job, man. Super inspiring interview. When you talk about faith, fitness, fun, right? And you talk about fitness being so important because it's such an important part of your life in general. And as it relates to stopping drinking, one of the things that you will notice that happens, and you're like, this is weird, but it's just natural. You're going to have so much extra time on your hands. It's going to be crazy. You're not going to recognize how much you are wasting time drinking, that when you stop drinking, you're like, holy shit, what do I do with all of this extra time? Exercise will help you fill some of that time. So there's that, and just a pragmatic way of using exercise to fill your time. The other way is two other reasons. One, whenever you exercise, it's scientifically been proven to help you reduce cravings. Because like I said, you are using alcohol to create an artificial high. You can get a natural high from exercising, from running. So it will help you fight off those cravings, and it reduce that feeling of wanting to drink because you're actually working your body out, and it makes it easier for you to say, okay, I'm good. I don't need to drink. I'm doing something else that can give my body that release of that tension that alcohol used to help me desire. And the third way I love it in regards to exercise commitment is that for me, I believe that for you, sometimes you need a motivating factor. And if you can have an external motivator that is similar to the internal change that you're having, it's going to increase the chance that you feel good, right? And you want to keep going. So if you're exercising, you're working out, and all of a sudden either you're losing 20 pounds or you're gaining 20 pounds of muscle, and someone like, Quan, you look great, and you know it's because you haven't been drinking, that external motivator is going to be like, I need to keep not drinking a little bit longer, right? So it's that pragmatic reason of it gives you that motivating factor to keep going. So not only does it help reduce craving, it helps you with your time, but it also gives you that motivating factor to, all right, I need to keep doing this because it helps my body. So that's E for exercise commitment. D is diet improvement. And the reason diet is so important is because whenever you exercise, right, for you to see that external change, it's important for you to hopefully eat right to help you get there quicker. Because if you work out and you're just eating a bunch of crap, you might not see the change. So if you want to see the change, you need to eat better. But the other way is that there are certain green leafy foods that you can eat that give you vitamin B, folate, that actually helps reduce cravings. And as well as vitamin D helps with the creation of serotonin that makes you feel good. So eating good green leafy foods actually will reduce cravings, give you the folate you need to make you feel good, create dopamine, and then vitamin D help you improve or produce serotonin. So that's that, like, eating right does make a difference in your mental health, in your body, and the way it responds to things. It helps you sleep better. It just makes you overall feel better. So there's that physical, like their actual pragmatic reason of eating better will help you reduce and not want to drink as much. And then the last one is for success seeking. And for me, this is the most important, right? I tell anybody, you need to do all of them, but if you only do one, you need to do S. And the reason I say you need to do S is that whenever you stop drinking, I feel like you've given yourself a gift. You've given yourself an opportunity to do something amazing. Because when you stop drinking, when you think about your synapses and how your brain is able to grow without alcohol hindering it in the way that it used to, you have a higher level of thinking and creativity and achievement than you ever could have before. So therefore, to take advantage of that, I feel like you need to give yourself a goal that the old Ken or the old Quan could have never had, because you need to take advantage of the new lease on life you've given yourself and put something out that it would have scared you before. You try something that you could have never done had you been drinking. Like for me, it was to learn Korean. My wife's Korean, and I said, man, I want to learn Korean because I can talk to my in-laws, and I think it really be really good to learn something that's so challenging that I would have never thought about before learning Hangul. And then I just started playing with it and learning it and trying to get through it. And I started learning how to write it and read it and take classes. And then over time, I got better at it. And like so for me, then what that did was it became something that I had gained over the years that I hadn't been drinking. That for me, I said, if I went back to drinking, I might lose all that hard work that I'd done before. So it became like that extra desire, that extra buffer, that extra thing that made me say, I can't go back because look how far I've come. Look how much I've gained. Look who I've become. That if I go back to drinking now, I'm going to lose all that. You can drink and just sit around the house and watch Netflix all day if you want to. But for me, I feel like then you're missing the point of what you've done and what you've given yourself. There's an analogy I call the waddle analogy. And I always give Jeff Graham from Back to Zero podcast credit for this because he came up with it. And I use it all the time, but I always give Jeff credit. And the wallet analogy, how it relates to success seeking, it's like if you are walking down the street, right? You're walking down the street. There's this big dude, tattoos on his neck, ripped dude, and he looks crazy in his eyes. He walks up to you for whatever reason. He's like, give me your wallet, right? And this wallet is a wallet you just bought from Walmart last week, $5. You don't have anything in it. You ain't got any money in it, right? You're like, okay, whatever. Like, could you fight this guy and maybe not give him your wallet? Maybe. But is it worth you fighting this guy? No. Give the guy your wallet. Who cares, right? So do the same analogy in another dimension, another universe, and this guy comes up to you saying, big guy, and he's like, he wants your wallet, but now this time the wallet is a wallet you've had for 10 years. The wallet is a wallet that you have your families of your family, pictures of your family in it. It has notes in it, things that you committed that you can't get back before. It has different things, credit cards, money. It has so much valuable stuff in it that if you gave this wallet up, there's no way you're going to get all this stuff back. Would you be willing to give that guy, just give him your wallet? Would you not try to fight? Would you not try something to not give this guy your wallet?
Absolutely.
My thought is, of course you would. So you are the wallet. So when you stop drinking, you have to invest in yourself to create that person that if anything happens that makes you think you want to drink again, you've already put so much work in yourself that you can't give it up so easily. You can't go back so easily because you've done way too much work just to give it up. And that's why I tell people success seeking is always the most important one, because that's the thing that's going to keep you from ever letting anything tempt you to go back to the person you were before.
I got to be honest, man. I am completely blown away.
Jeff Graham, it's a great analogy. That was his. I just use it.
Well, for me, it's Ken Middleton.
Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Now, in the beginning, you said that alcohol can be good,
right,
in some instances, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm not trying to say that this is what you mean by that, but I think it's a good segue. And I learned about this through study first and foremost, but also my dad. He lived in the UK for quite a bit of time, and I want to talk about this because of binge drinking. Like, I really feel like it's time to kind of hone into that rites of passage that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But with the binge drinking. See, in the UK, kids, teenagers, late teenagers, even in high school, right, their parents permit them to maybe have a pint of beer, maybe have a little bit of wine at dinner, right?
Yeah.
And not super regularly, right, but enough to where when you have your freedom at this point, you won't go gung-ho,
go crazy,
and binge because this has been a part of your learned experience.
Growing up,
right? Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because when you sent that to me, I had to do research because I wasn't as adept in that realm with the US versus UK. But I did do research and I did look it up. It's weird, Quan, but I got to be honest. The stats show that they drink more in the UK than we drink here, which I didn't believe that. But yes, so the UK alcohol use disorder is around 12%. In the US right now, it's around 8%. The reason though is that because what happens in the UK is that you can drink at 18. So 18 when you go to college, a lot of times there's a lot of parties in college that are catered to students. Like, come drink here because we give you, because everybody can drink. In the US, they don't do that as much because that would then mean like you're trying to encourage underage drinking because 75% of the students shouldn't be 21 yet. Like, most of them are 18, 19, 20. There's only probably the seniors and some of the juniors are going to be that. So at any rate, I say that to say, like, I see where you're coming from, though, in the sense that if you get used to it at a young age, it makes it a little easier for you. But the reality is, as I shared earlier, even at a young age, the effect of alcohol over time is going to take its hold because that's just how it works. Now, where I will say that I don't, here's what I mean when I say I think sometimes a portion of alcohol can be good for you. I think when you're young and you're in college and you're trying to kind of get a little bit of courage, I think alcohol can help there, right? Because you don't know, you're thinking, oh, I'm afraid to go talk to that girl or go talk to that guy, but I need some alcohol to help me, get over that. And for me, I just use myself as an example. That gave me the courage and the motivation to know that it was possible. Now, where I think it becomes a problem, and this is what hurts most of us, is where you feel like you have to have alcohol to be that person and do that thing. And that's where I think we kind of go off the road a little bit, where alcohol becomes a need for you. And the scary thing, and I will say about college, is around at such a young age, when you drink that much, you have a propensity to make really, really bad decisions. So for me, when I think about, all right, how do you reconcile the fact that I'm saying, hey, you shouldn't drink too much, but it is okay for you to drink some? It's around the education of it. It's around them understanding that at a certain point, if you think about as you're developing your prefrontal cortex and your decision-making ability, if you drink too much, the likelihood of you making a dumb decision is much greater than if you wait until you're older. And the fact that as you're developing, when you drink a whole lot in your hippocampus, you can damage that in a manner that is hard to come back from. It's around just educating kids on, hey, it's okay to drink some, but not to binge drink, to go to the point where you black out and brown out, because those are the times in which your white and dark and gray matter are being affected. So for me, it's around, hey, how do I hopefully help educate college students to understand that alcohol, it can help you in some ways to give you some courage if you feel like you need it. But at the same time, if you go overboard, it can be too much. So you really have to have the education about it. So that's kind of my focus as I think about how I message college students. Going back to the US and the UK, I just think alcohol is alcohol, man. It doesn't matter where it is, man. It could be Brazil, it could be UK, it could be Spain. It's going to do the same thing over time, man. The numbers are pretty similar, I think.
Absolutely. So you were talking about the dark gray and white matter. I think that's a perfect segue to talk about that golden period that you referenced in your book from 18 to 25. Can you explain that?
Yeah, dude, it's wild, man. Once again, I just learned this from drinking. So a lot of people think that the age of 21 is arbitrary as it relates to drinking, and it kind of feels that way. However, the importance of people not drinking until they're 21 is that from the age of 18 to 25, your brain is still developing greatly, and it is super malleable. Like I tell people all the time, and I'm curious, I'm gonna ask you a question, is this true? But I remember from the age of 18 to 25, I remember this explicitly. I felt like I was almost a different person every year. And I didn't solidify who I was from a personality perspective until 25 years old and then to 30. Did you feel that, or is that just me? Do you remember growing at that age and how that affected you?
I do. I definitely felt like I was a different person during those times. I was also mired in a lot of trauma.
Okay.
And then through this research, as a result of my mental health journey, I kind of understood on a biological level what that was. So you referenced the prefrontal cortex, right? So just for the viewership, you're right. The prefrontal cortex is basically in the front of your brain. It's responsible for your critical and reflexive thinking. Basically, this region of your brain gives you the ability to take external stimuli and subject it to scrutiny before you internalize it. That region of your brain doesn't begin its development until 7 years old. It doesn't complete the development until you're 23 years old.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a biological reason or factor as to why we may have had those experiences, and dare say anyone in that age group has those experiences, and why we may be reluctant to say no to peer pressure, or how we formulate our spheres of influence in that college arena that contributes greatly to that heavy alcohol intake.
So the 18 to 25 is so important. You said 23, and I've read because your brain is still developing. That prefrontal cortex is still growing, and it's so malleable. So it's almost like a piece of clay, right? If you have a piece of clay that's not in a kiln yet, right? To burn it, like you can move it and mold it and grow. So when you're growing at that 18 to 25 age, you're able to learn and process things very, very quickly and fast. And if you are drinking a lot of alcohol during that time, you handicap that development. You handicap your ability to grow and learn. So as we think about the golden age of growing, some of the greatest people who've ever lived did things in that time frame. I didn't notice until I did research, but Mozart died when he was 35. It was in his 20s that he created some of his greatest symphonies. He didn't live that long. In his early 20s, at 20 to 25 to 26, he created some of his greatest symphonies, because at that age, your brain can grasp things in such a different manner. And if you drink a lot of alcohol, you are handicapping the skill that you have at that age. Charles Darwin. So when he wrote his Evolution of Human Species, he was in his 50s, but he started when he was around 28 years old. He was still a very young man when he started the writing, where, to your point, he was looking at things and critically observing them and saw things that other people couldn't see at 28. Michelangelo, he lived until he was in his 60s or 70s, I believe. But he created his greatest work, David, when he was 26 years old. One of his greatest works ever was at a very, very young age. Einstein, which this blows my mind. The theory of relativity, he created that at 26 years old. Your brain at that age, you can do amazing things. And when we drink at that young of an age, it like I said, like a Kindle, when you're malleable, you can learn, you can see things, you're able to shift, you're able to look at things differently that can create different things, that eureka moments that you wouldn't have seen before. But when you drink, you're lessening that ability. You're subduing that ability. You're missing all the things that your brain can see. And then once you reach 25 and once your brain solidifies, it's more difficult for you to see those things because your body isn't open as much. That's why I say 18 to 25 is such an amazing time in our life that if you hurt yourself by drinking excessively and doing harder drugs, I don't want to scare anybody, but the reality is you can not do permanent damage, but you can put a cap on what you could be as you age because you have done so much damage to yourself at such a young age. So I tell people, just be very careful. Here's an example that I think I remember these people. You remember I don't know if this happened to you in college, but you had those friends in college that started drinking when they were like 14, 15, 16. And then you run into them and they're like 26, 27, 28, and they act like they did when they were in high school. Like your friends in high school, they drink when they were 16, 17, but then you run into them when they're older and they still act like they're 17, 18-year-old. Because when you drink at that age, your ability to develop, you handicap it, and your ability to grow, you hurt it. So that's why people, when you drink at a very, very young age, your ability to mature is not there. But if you don't, your sky and what you can accomplish is amazing. So I just press upon students like, hey, you can drink, but if you want to achieve amazing things, control that, because if you drink too much, you're going to hurt where you could be in the future. But if you don't drink too much at all, there are great heights that you can reach. And there's a lot of examples of people doing amazing things to back that up.
Absolutely, man. So to sort of reiterate that briefly on a biological level, if you can explain to the viewership synaptic connections and their linkage to what neuroplasticity is, I think that'll be a great thing.
So with neuroplasticity, it's around your ability for your synapses to make connections. Like you said, it's like theory of relativity. Like Einstein was looking at so many things, and all of a sudden, all the information that he'd had in the past clicked together. All the different pieces of information that he had connected together, right? For neuroplasticity, it's your brain's ability to make those connections quickly. When you drink a lot, your body loses its ability for that to happen fast, for your body to make those connections, period. So as you age, as you get older, it naturally becomes worse for you. And when you drink, it decreases that or increases the negativity of how much it's gotten worse for you. So when you're young, your ability, like with anything, I remember knowing pre-cal and physics and all those things. I couldn't even think about doing that now. Because when you're at a young age, you have the ability to grasp things at such a quicker manner because your brain is so, like I said, it's so much more malleable that your synapses will connect much faster and they fire much quicker. It's no different in some ways as a sprinter. An Olympic sprinter, right? When you're younger, your soft twitch and long twitch muscles, they can go much faster because they're younger. So you can run much faster. It's the same thing with your brain. Neuroplasticity, at a young age, you can learn much quicker because your brain can grasp it much faster. As you age, your ability becomes less. If you drink as you age, it decreases even more. So I tell people, when you think about dementia, when you think about Alzheimer's, the reason these things happen, you got the prefrontal cortex, right? It's your decision making. There's that. And then there's the hippocampus, which is your short-term and long-term memory. When you have blackouts and brownouts, it is affecting your short-term and long-term memory. That is what is hurting you. There's something called the Wasserstein-Korsanoff syndrome. Can't remember exactly how to say it. It's a WK syndrome, where it talks about if you drink too much, your body doesn't get enough vitamin B, thiamine, for your body to be able to solidify from your short-term memory, from your long-term memory. If you drink too much at a young age, that is the reason when you have brownouts and blackouts, these memory lapses all of a sudden your ability to remember things when you're not drinking becomes impaired because your body loses its ability to make the synapses over time. Your gray, white, dark matter, of course, lessens. There's a portion in that book, I think, if I don't know what page it's on exactly, but it's in the one that talks about the college years, how you have two brains. One is a normal brain of a 23-year-old who hasn't drank most of his life. Another is the brain of someone who's drank the majority of his life at 23. If you look at how much their brains are lit up, the one who hasn't drank, whenever something happens from a simulation perspective, his whole brain is lit up like a Christmas tree because his synapses are firing. The same age individual at 23 who has been drinking has 10% of his synapses firing because his body has been so impaired by drinking that it cannot make the connections anymore. So the chances of this person learning anywhere near as closely as this person, they're not even in the same ballpark. And when you do that at such a young age, you can do tremendous damage to yourself, which is why it's so dangerous to drink excessively at a young age.
Absolutely. And to sort of walk that back a bit, back to your MEDS acronym, because yeah, we do all of this damage to our synapse connections, our neurotransmitters, and then we have failing neuroplasticity as a result. But it seems like what you were saying earlier, we can begin to sort of do our best to try to repair that when we remove alcohol, and referencing specifically when you were talking about learning Korean.
That's it.
Right? So how you were able to utilize that brain power in the absence of alcohol and sort of reverse that process.
That's it, man. That's another reason. I didn't even mention that, but you're exactly right, Quan. That's why it's so important to challenge yourself, because over time your brain has been hurt because of alcohol. Now to repair that, you need to find something that will allow you to recreate and those disconnections and push yourself to do things that you wouldn't do. The great thing about it too is this is so important naturally as you age, regardless of alcohol or no alcohol. One of the things that keep people young for a long time is continually learning new things, continually pushing yourself out of your comfort zone with your mind. This is famous saying that everybody here, when you stop growing, you start dying. Right. That's the reality. The reality is when you become that person, it's like, oh, I don't want to learn how to use the internet. It's too hard for me. Like those are the old people that you're like, right. They're missing out. You gotta push yourself to not be that person. The importance of pushing yourself and learning new things are one of the things that keep brains sharp, prevents Alzheimer's, prevents dementia, prevents a lot of the different diseases that happen as you age. It's about how do you consistently challenge your brain. And as I said before, if you drink, it's going to become a hell of a lot more difficult for you than ever before. Because alcohol, the thing about alcohol, and I tell people this, you got to understand, I don't tell people that you shouldn't drink. I can't not say that enough. However, I do believe that everybody, I don't care where you're from, I don't care how much you drank when you were younger, I don't care what you're doing. I feel like everybody should stop drinking at the age of 40. And the reason I feel that way is because at 40, your body, and of course it's a little different for everyone. Some people might be earlier, some people might be older, but at 40, your body makes such a change physiologically that the trade-offs that you're making when you drink exponentially are worse than they were when you were younger, right? And here's how I can explain it to you. So when you're young, right, I give it there's a car analogy, right? When you're young, let's say you got a brand new car that you just got off the lot. If you want to take this car and say, hey, I'm going to take this car to a parking lot and I want to do a bunch of donuts with this car and just push it out and see what it does, right? That's probably not advisable, but the car is probably going to be okay, right? The car is not going to break anything. It's brand new. Everything is looking good. Like everything's fresh off the lot. The car is probably going to be fine if you go do some donuts in the parking lot. You take a 25, 30-year-old car and take it into the parking lot and try to do some donuts, you're going to probably tear something up. That car is going to be done, right? So when you're 40 years old, what you got to understand is that your body is not the same young body that it used to be. And once again, scientifically and physiologically, your body does not have the ability to break down alcohol in the way that it did before. I gave you the stat earlier. When you drink, the chances that it increases your chance of having cancer 40%, if not more, right? The reason that is the case is that alcohol is a carcinogen, right? When alcohol goes into your body, the body breaks it down to acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is a carcinogen. It will cause cancer. Now, when you're younger, your liver pushes that out of your body quickly because your liver is young. When it breaks down into acetaldehyde, it breaks it down into like acetaldehyde dehydrogenase, and then eventually it becomes carbon monoxide and water and dissipates from your body, right? It happens when you're young, it happens quickly, right? Because your body is brand new. You got the brand new car off the lot. When you're 40 and you got the 20-year-old liver, right? It's not doing it. It's not turning that acetaldehyde into carbon monoxide and water as quickly. So it's sitting there in your body. It's sitting there much longer. So that carcinogen, which is known to cause cancer, is in your body much slower. So the chances of you developing cancer increases dramatically as you age. That's just the natural tendency. So I tell people, because your body does not break down alcohol as quickly, you put yourself at such much more of a risk. That is part of the reason where when you wake up the next day, your hangover is still there. Like that's the reason, because your body doesn't break alcohol down the way it did before. And then over time, you get drunk much faster and don't realize it. You think you're okay because you think you can drink as much as you used to, and you can't. You're more prone to do something dumb because you think that you're sober when you're not. There's just so many reasons not to drink. And the other side of it, in my personal opinion, when you become 40, it could potentially be your golden age of mental clarity in a lot of ways. And by causing alcohol, because like I said, when you're 20, you're 19, you're so unsure of yourself, you haven't lived enough life, you need something sometimes to give you courage. Usually by 40, you've lived enough life. If you got that confidence, you got that courage, you don't need something externally to make you have it. And for some people, I tell, like, you have this new golden age for the next 40 years of your life that can be amazing if you're able to give up alcohol and lean into what it could be without it.
Wow. I told you guys, my boy Ken is wicked smart. I told you. Before we segue into the last segment of what we're doing here today, I just want to take a moment to express my sincere appreciation, because I feel like the viewership can really glean a lot of impactful information, right? And you said a moment ago that, yeah, your 40s should be those golden years.
Golden years.
But it's kind of scary, because it seems like college isn't the only scary period when we're talking about alcohol. It seems like it graduates into happy hour culture.
Oh my God. So, I mean, I was in sales, man. So anyone that's lived in the corporate America and understands sales, and typically corporate America in general, just know alcohol is a big part of it. And I don't knock it, but I do appreciate that some companies are getting away from it. But it does make it challenging for sometimes for you to live in a world in which you don't drink all the time. But you need to be comfortable not putting yourself in a situation of living in the happy hour culture, because, so just to go back to the book a little bit, I do this thing in the book where I tell alcohol parables. And the reason I do these alcohol parables is because I want people to see, at the end of the day, life is about choices. And if you make these choices, at some point, right, you have a fork in the road, and the choice you make is going to veer you off one direction or the other direction. And you can decide where you go. So we talk about happy hour culture. That's the Dan and Dave story. So Dan and Dave, two friends that both started working at the company at the same time. Dan was the friend who loved to drink, loved to have happy hour, loved to have a good time. Dave was the guy that didn't like the drink, wasn't really with it all the time, and was like, hey, I don't, drinking is fine, but I got work to do. Short term, Dan was more successful than Dave was at the work, because he was building relationship with his peers. He was drinking on happy hours. They felt like they knew Dan. So he was getting promotions and seeing as the guy that everyone liked. So short term, while Dave was doing the work, Dan was making the relationships, and it looked like Dan was doing better than Dave. Fast forward 10 years in the future, all of a sudden, Dan is having marital problems because of his drinking. Because when he drinks, he has a tendency to maybe say something to some female that he shouldn't say something to, and it would get back to his wife. When he was drinking at home with his wife, he and his wife would get in an argument about something. When he drank, he had a tendency to say something smart to somebody that he shouldn't say. So in the first 10 years of their career, Dan was doing better than Dave, but because Dave kept focusing on the work and not on the drinking, Dan eventually gets fired because of an intern said that he said something at a happy hour after he was going through his divorce that ended up ending his career, whereas Dave was successful and continued to live a good life that was fine. So it's around, don't feel the peer pressure to want to have to drink because you feel like you need it to be successful. If you just stay the course, you may see other people that maybe they get things a little quicker than you do, but in the long run, and we talk about 40 being your golden years, you're going to be way more successful because of the susceptibility of what alcohol exposes you to when you put yourself at risk like that on a consistent basis. You could do and say something that's going to hinder your career. Even though it seems like it helps in the short run, it's going to hurt in the long run.
Absolutely, man. And lastly, and you've given us a whole bunch of gems today. But lastly, in summation, if you can just summarize basically debunking the myth of alcohol being safe. But prior to you doing that, I want to be transparent and share, right? So, the viewership knows, you're my close friend. I've been on my mental health journey for the better part of 2 years. And in that time frame, I excluded alcohol from, my diet, from my practice, so on and so forth. I reintroduced the agent, if you will, recently. And what I found is that I think what fueled my excessive alcohol abuse was the gaping hole of unresolved trauma within me.
That's fair.
That isn't there. But having this conversation, so I think this is something that is definitely manageable, right? My intake now, I can objectively see that. But, when you just think about, the most high, when you just think about esoteric things and how the timing, the universal timing of everything, I think what hit home for me was the MEDS acronym, right? Which is really making me question if returning back to this thing is really a good thing. So I really appreciate your time. And yes, in brief summation, if you can just summarize, just debunking the myth of alcohol, the agent of alcohol being safe.
Well, they use the term drink responsibly, and there's just no such thing. Like, you can't drink responsibly. If you drink, you're going to put yourself at risk. Like, once again, I go back to the Surgeon General. They used to say, CDC was reported, because Canada just came out with this study, I want to say 2 years ago, where they finally said no amount of alcohol is safe for you. And they used to say 1 to 2 glasses a day over the course of your life or whatever helps with your heart. This just was not true. That was just absolutely not true. If you drink 1 to 2 glasses a day, that will put you at 7 to 14 glasses a week. This is how crazy that stat is. If you drink 7 to 14 glasses a week, at 7 glasses a week, you drink more than 60% of the population. At 7 glasses a week. When they say 1 to 2 a day, no one's drinking that 1 to 2 a day. You gotta understand, people that drink typically, it's excessively. It's a problem. Most people either drink or they don't drink at all. They drink a lot or they don't drink. There's some that is in the middle. There's a fair amount of that. But it's around how negative it actually is for you. And if you drink 2 drinks a day, you drink more than 80% of the population. So there's no amount of alcohol that is good for you. Alcohol does not help with your heart. It does not decrease the chance of heart disease. That's just not true. That was something that the alcohol industry has been pushing for so many years because they want people to drink. I use this concept of priming. Priming is the concept of when you have been exposed to something so casually for so long, you accept it as true. You see this all the time in movies and films. Just do me a favor. When you go look at movies now, because I didn't notice it until I stopped drinking, just watch how many times alcohol is randomly introduced into the situation that it has nothing to do with the plot of the story. The alcohol industry is always doing everything it can to invest, to put alcohol at the forefront of your mind, to make you think everyone is doing it and there's nothing wrong with it. But I tell you that it's just not true. The reality is your life will be better without it. And there's no amount of alcohol that's healthy for you in the long run. None whatsoever.
Gotcha. Brother, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you compiling this incredibly impactful manuscript because it's a lot of useful information. I appreciate everything that you broke down here today.
Yeah.
And it's my sincere hope that the viewership can glean some type of insight and inspiration from it. Lastly, do you have anything going on that you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, first is the book, right? So please go check out the book, buy it. Buy a few copies, if you will. Be nice to do it to your friends. You can find it on thebamboozledbook.com, bamboozledbook.com. So you can buy the book there, please. Definitely would appreciate it. Physical copies, digital copies, ebooks, or you can find it on Amazon as well. Go to Amazon.com, put in Bamboozled, you can find it there. Bamboozled, Ken Middleton. Second, AINF, Alcohol is Not Your Friend, AINYF. That's my publication where I have over 200 writers that they're writing about alcohol consciousness. They're giving tips and strategies of things you can do to not drink. So go check out AINF if you just want to like read something for free. Typically it's for free. I think Medium may charge $5 if you want a subscription, but you can read a lot for free. Go there and kind of whet your appetite for it. And then lastly, if you want to try, now it's dry January. There's a lot of different things. I have a challenge called Dry 90. Dry90.com is the website. I think 90 days is enough days. It goes back to what I shared with you, Quan, the 90 days for that I recognize, like, holy smokes, there's really something here. 90 days is enough time for you to really go through and do the things you need to do to be successful. It'll walk you through the things that you need to do for that Dry 90 challenge for you to be successful. But check it out. You don't pay anything for that. So check that out if you want to try to give alcohol consciousness a chance, and hopefully it's helpful in some manner. So thanks for having me, Quan. It's been good, man.
You bet, man.
My guy.
Much appreciated.
Yes, sir.
Bamboozled. Do yourself a favor and check this out. Again, proponents of not drinking, not necessarily. Alcohol consciousness, definitely.
No doubt.
Listen, if you found value here, and it's my sincere hope that you did, then please comment, like, subscribe, and share this information. Follow the You versus You podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And keep checking me out, and we'll keep busting this thing down. Peace.
Let's clear our heads of it. I'm so good now, I feel good now. The baggage put down, just let me live. Just let me live. Now my mind's clear. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you.